Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of TNTT Truth Not Trash with Tim and our special series on the Constitution. This is episode 11, so we're making some good progress. Hey, before we get going too far, though, I want to ask you guys a favor. So, apparently, Facebook thinks that I'm an insurrectionist or something. I don't know what they think, but they're not allowing me to share these videos on other people's pages and on inside groups. So pretty frustrating. Don't know why. Don't know what I did. Uh, I tried to request a review. Just got our decision is final within seconds. So do me a favor, help me out. If you like what we're talking about, if you think it has relevance, and you want to help me out and get this word out, then please share this information and get this stuff out to people. Man, I seem to have some kind of a crazy shadow on myself here. I was out feeding the animals. It's probably a speck of mud. Anyway, pigs are dirty. Not really. They're pretty clean. So let's get to this. First thing I want to say is that we're on the Bill of Rights. And so last week we covered the First Amendment. Pretty important amendment, right? It's first for a reason, because the people should have the right to be heard without the fear of, of what other governments have done to people in the past about speaking up against the government. So it's important. But the Second Amendment is equally as important, maybe even more important, because the Second Amendment is the teeth of the people when it comes to the Constitution. It means that the government needs to fear the people because the people are who's truly in charge. So the Second Amendment, most people think about that gun rights, well-regulated militia, the rights of the people, all these things. So first I want to mention something. There has not been a single instance in history, at least not that I know of, that I found in my searches, where civil liberty was lost and religious liberty kept. So if you are a person of faith, realize that as civil liberty goes away, most of the time religious liberty goes away, and vice versa. We haven't been able to maintain religious liberty in any fashion, right? It's always been persecuted and beat on. So we haven't been able to maintain any religious liberty, or excuse me, if we lose religious liberty, it seems to be that we start to lose civil liberty as well. So these are intertwined, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so we need to keep that in mind. So the Second Amendment is there to help us protect our liberty, to protect ourselves, not only against foreign enemies. It says foreign and domestic, right? When we take an oath. So not only against foreign enemies, but enemies from within. I'm not saying who those enemies may be. I'm not even saying there are any at this point in time. That's what I don't understand why Facebook is cutting me off. But what I am saying is that if this were to happen, that's why we have the Second Amendment. So you know me, I like to start things off a little different. But what I'm going to do right now, instead of playing my normal video, which I will do, I'll get to, I want to read you a couple things. So we're told that the Constitution and the Second Amendment didn't really mean that the government wanted us to have these guns, and that the right of the individual to own firearms is preserved. That's what the revisionists of the modern times are trying to tell us, and they couldn't be any further from the truth. And so what we need to understand, and it bears repetition over and over and over again, that a recent stream, and I'm going to read this, a recent stream of scholarship that purports to show that the Americans did not widely possess or use firearms back when the Constitution was written, says that, and this is what they used, some critics of the so-called gun culture have attempted to show through probate records that few guns were listed among household belongings bequeathed to heirs. So when people wrote their wills, they didn't necessarily include guns, right? They included things that they thought were of extreme high value, paintings, gold, furniture, homes, land. And so guns, in their opinion, in these scholars' opinions, were not numerous, nor hunting and gun ownership widespread. But the facts bear out something totally different. The facts bear out that guns were so prevalent that citizens did not even feel they needed to list them specifically. There was at least, they say that 50% of all households owned one or more guns at the founding of our nation. Pretty important to know. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you didn't hunt, you probably didn't eat, right? Hunt and farm. So that's pretty important to think about. The other thing I wanted you to hear, and this is just stuff that once again, you don't got to take my word for it. You can go out and look it up. But the reason the Second Amendment was put into place was because of the fear of not only foreign intervention, foreign enemies, foreign governments, foreign militaries, foreign armies, but fear of a standing domestic military and fear of an overbearing government would take over and stomp out the Constitution. And so the Second Amendment was a way to ensure that the Constitution would continue to hold the government responsible and limit the government, not the people. It says here, the Second Amendment addressed the fears of a professional standing army by guaranteeing the right of citizens to arm themselves and to join militias. Over the years, the militia preface has become thoroughly and often deliberately misinterpreted to imply that framers intended citizens to be armed only in the context of an army, only in the context of an army under the authority of the state, when in fact militias were the exact opposite of a state-controlled army. The state militias taken together were expected to serve as a counterweight to the federal army. And the further implications was that citizens were to be as well armed as the government itself. As well armed as the government itself. I mean, that's pretty important, right? And what's going on is they're trying to take our rights away, our ability to be armed, a little bit at a time, so we don't notice it. It's like death from 1,000 cuts, or how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. Elephant doesn't even know he's being eaten. So let's get to the fun part, the stuff that I like to do. So give me 1 second. We will pull up the next cool thing. And I better turn the volume down on the TV, otherwise it'll echo. But this is good stuff.
It's a hot topic.
I've got a proven record fighting to defend the Second Amendment.
The Second Amendment.
The Second Amendment.
So important is our Second Amendment.
But what are they really talking about? Well, the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States is part of the Bill of Rights, which means it's one of the fundamental freedoms at the heart of our society. Literally, it reads, quote, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." The founders made it clear that they felt the right to own firearms would always be very important. But since then, there have been considerable debates regarding the amendment's intended scope. Much of the controversy over whether the intent was limited to the prefatory clause of states' rights to maintain a well-regulated militia, or whether the intent was geared more towards the operative clause of protecting the individual citizen's right to keep and bear arms. Centuries before the Second Amendment was even drafted, European political writers used the term well-regulated militia to refer to all the people armed with their own firearms or swords, bows, or spears, and led by officers they chose. Congress has brought up legislation to clarify the Second Amendment's meaning 4 times in history. And each time, in 1866, 1942, 1986, and 2005, Congress passed laws to reaffirm this guarantee of personal freedom. Throughout the years, there have also been many Supreme Court rulings and efforts to control the possession of arms by government authority in the form of gun control laws. Despite the decisions, debates regarding gun control and gun rights continue. Probably the most important aspect of the Second Amendment is the philosophy on which it was founded, that all free people have the right to defend themselves, their families, their communities, and this nation.
All right. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell, right? We as individuals should have the right to defend ourselves, our communities, and our nation. That's what we should have. So with that being said, let's read the Second Amendment. I mean, she showed it to us, but let's read it again. And then we're going to break it down a little bit. Got to get to it. There we go. Second Amendment. Let's blow it up so it can be seen by everybody. So here it is. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So basically a couple of lines of text there, but it says a lot. I mean, a lot. So let's think about this. So a well-regulated militia. Let's talk about militias. I've got a couple of different definitions. I've got the one from the legal definition from some law book. It doesn't even say where it's from, actually. And then I've got the definition from Britannica. And then I've got a definition from the dictionary that I had sitting on my desk at work. What the heck is that one? It's one of the modern ones. But first of all, let's talk about the Britannica one. Military, militia, organization of citizens with limited military training, which is available for emergency service, usually for local defense. Militia forces constitute today the bulk of the armed forces available for emergency services in Switzerland, Israel, Sweden, and several other countries. So that's Britannica. Basically, what it's saying is that the people are the militia. Militia, a group of private citizens who train for military duty in order to be ready to defend their state or country in times of emergency. A militia is distinct from a regular military force, which are units of professional soldiers maintained both in war and peace by the government. So in both of those definitions, it didn't say anywhere that this militia was maintained by the government or put together by the government. It said it could be called up by the government. And the third definition says any, well, I didn't write that one down. Basically, it said any legal citizen of military age, and I think it said 16 to 65, who can carry a weapon. And I should find that, and I'll attach it to it. But that was the definition back during the Founding Fathers' times. I don't know why that's not on my notes here. But basically any, and it said man at that point in time, but in today's world it's anybody who could fight. Who could fight? What else do we got here? So that was a well-regulated militia. And then it says, being necessary to the security of a free state. Well, let's talk about this. George Washington said firearms stand next to the importance to the Constitution itself. Firearms stand next in importance to the Constitution itself, George Washington. That's a pretty straightforward statement. How about Thomas Jefferson? What country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. James Madison. Americans have the right an advantage of being armed, unlike the citizens of other countries whose governments are afraid to trust the people with arms. Richard Lee. To preserve liberty, it is essential that the whole body of people always possess arms. It's kind of the way Switzerland does it. Every able-bodied person in Switzerland, men in general, but now women too, are required to own a firearm. To disarm the people was the best and most effectual way to enslave them. George Mason. I'll read a couple more. Alexander Hamilton. The best we can hope for concerning the people at large is that they be properly armed. Another Thomas Jefferson. I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. George Mason. When the resolution of enslaving America was formed in Great Britain, the British Parliament was advised by an artful man who was governor of Pennsylvania to disarm the people, that it was the best and most effectual way to enslave them, but that they should not do it openly, but to weaken them and let them sink gradually by totally disguising and neglecting the militia. Oh, how about this guy, Gandhi? Among the many misdeeds of the British rule in India, history will look upon the act of depriving a whole nation of arms as the blackest. Thomas Jefferson. For people who are free and who mean to remain free, a well-organized and armed militia is their best security. Let's see if you can guess this one. The most foolish mistake we could possibly make would be to allow the subjugated races to possess arms. Adolf Hitler. Figure the odds. So out of all those quotes, the one that wants to take away the weapons from the population is probably one of the most evil, dangerous men in the history of our world. So that's the Second Amendment, guys. That's the freedom being necessary to secure a free state. Now, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, a lot of those quotes talked about that. That's individuals. I'm a person. You're a person. We are people. And we have the right to keep and bear arms. And if you look at the Founding Fathers and the way the Constitution was written and the mindset behind it, if I want to own an F-16 fighter jet or an M1A Abrams battle tank, and I can afford to do so, I should have the right to do so. That's my philosophy on it. And that's what a lot of the philosophies were. Did you know that when the war broke out, the Revolutionary War broke out, private citizens owned cannons, for God's sakes. They brought their own cannons to the battle, along with their own muskets and other firearms. And then it says, and this is a key statement right now, right here, especially in today's world, shall not be infringed. In the state of Washington, they're currently debating some new weapons bans, which we have to adamantly reject. It's just totally ridiculous. And it's just to make people feel good. It's just to make the left feel good. It'll have zero effect on anything, but it'll make the left feel good. And we got to quit doing all this feel good crap. So that's the Second Amendment. It's an important amendment. Without the Second Amendment, we have no teeth. We have no recourse. We have no ability to fight back if it gets out of hand. And that's the Second Amendment. That's what we talked about. All right, so let's keep on going. The Third Amendment has to do with military again. No soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So the military can't just take over your house and live in it, or your property and live on it in time of peace, for sure. And the only way they can do it even in time of war is if you let them, on either side, right? If you let them, or if there is law put in place to allow that. Fourth Amendment deals with searches and seizures. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath, or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, man, we've bastardized that all to hell over the years. When a police officer can just pull your car over and for no apparent reason whatsoever, other than maybe the way you look or something you said, can say, "Hey, open up your trunk and let me look," because they have in their minds probable cause. That's a tough one for me to accept. For them to have a search warrant to come into your house and look for something specific, but then find other things and then stay in place while they get on the phone and call somebody else to get another search warrant to justify something else they found that has nothing to do with what they were looking for originally. That's a stretch. This new FISA system they have going on, what a nightmare that is. You are never going to be safe in private, in your own person, again, as long as that FISA thing continues. Because somebody of power can always say, "Wait a minute, we're gonna forego this person's rights because we think it's worth it and it's important." So the Fourth Amendment's been being kicked in the butt over the last 25, 30, 40 years, and we need to rein that back in. And unfortunately, under basement Biden, I don't think we'll do any of that reining back in of any of these things. Let's look at the Fifth Amendment. Self-incrimination, right? You've always heard people say, "I take the Fifth." On the grounds I may incriminate myself, right? No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment of indictment or a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia. Back to the militia. When in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject to the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So I forgot to scroll down, but that one says a lot. So let's spend a little bit of time on it. We got about 8 minutes left, and I'd like to hit a couple more of these amendments. So no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment of indictment of a grand jury. So there has to be enough evidence to charge you. There has to be enough evidence to at least look further, right? That's what the grand jury says. Okay, you showed us enough. We need more. We're going to go to trial and find more. Except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia. So we're talking about military now. UCMJ actually takes on that. And we've heard a bunch of conspiracy theory stuff. We've also heard a bunch of actual things about UCMJ and military courts and things of that nature. So it's a little bit different in the military or out on the high seas. And when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy. That's that double jeopardy we've heard about, right? So if I'm tried for a crime and I'm acquitted of that crime, they cannot charge me with the same crime again under the same circumstance. I mean, if I were to go out and commit another crime or they found another circumstance of a crime being committed, like let's say they accused me of robbing this bank over here and I was acquitted of robbing that bank, they could charge me for robbing this bank over here. That's not double jeopardy, but they couldn't charge me again for the exact crime that I was acquitted of. All right, twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. Nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. That's I plead the Fifth on the grounds that my answers may incriminate me. So I could say, well, I'm not going to talk about it. I don't have to say anything. However, in today's world, it seems like by not defending yourself, you are admitting guilt, which that's not the way it's supposed to be, guys. but that's the way we read it now. Seems to me like if it gets, as soon as it gets put in the newspaper, that's your jury right there. Even if you're acquitted, all of a sudden you're a criminal. Okay, not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. So they can't just come and take your property. They can't just come and shoot you. Some of these attacks that happened over the years, where the government went in to break up a cult or something of that nature. They can't just go in and start destroying your property, taking your property. Yeah, might as well be stealing your property, depriving you of life and liberty without due process of law. And nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So they're saying, even if the government decides that, hey, we need that property to do something that we have to have it for, they got to pay you for it, and they got to pay you just compensation. All right, so that's the fifth. Sixth, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. That says a lot as well. So let me scroll down. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial. So we've all heard that, right? The right to a speedy trial. That means they can't put you in jail for years and years and years waiting to have a trial. And the trial has to be by an impartial jury in the state and district where the crime shall have been committed. And this is which district shall have been previously ascertained by law. That's talking about jurisdiction. Pretty important stuff. And to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation. So they can't just arrest you. This is one of the things that upsets me the most when I hear, or I used to watch Cops, or and I don't blame the police because it's a training thing, but they'll be arresting somebody and they'll say, hey, you're under arrest, put your hands behind your back. And the person will be like, what are you arresting me for? And they don't want to tell them, and they don't say anything, and they don't say anything. And it's frustrating because they need to be told what they're being charged with. And it says so in the Constitution. So come on, officer, just tell us what you're charging us with. I'm not going to resist arrest. If I screwed up, I need to pay the price. That's the way it is. But tell me what you're arresting me for. To be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. This talks about every person has the right to an attorney. If you can't afford one will be appointed to you, right? We've all heard that. You have the right to question the people who are accusing you and say, what gives? Why do you think that I did this? So you have the right to question your accusers, and you have the right to obtain witnesses that will collaborate your story and who you are, to help you defend yourself. All right, so that's the seventh. Let's go to the eighth. Excess bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Self-explanatory. We don't got to spend a whole bunch of time on there, but basically it says that, cruel and unusual punishment, that's a big deal. We don't want to go in there and do that kind of stuff. Although I am an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth kind of guy. If you're caught in the act of killing somebody, then I have no problem returning the favor. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Ninth Amendment. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So what it's saying here is that maybe it didn't get everything in there in this Bill of Rights. Maybe they didn't cover all the rights that the people want. And it's saying here that the enumeration in the Constitution, which means the fact that it was written in the Constitution, of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So other rights that we've already had and retained prior to this Constitution, and in in my opinion, and most people's opinion, even since the Constitution, things that we accept as rights, even if they're not actually written in the Constitution, are still rights. All right. And then the 10th Amendment, and we'll finish with that because that's the Bill of Rights. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So basically, it is saying that, once again, like the 9th Amendment, if just because it doesn't specify it in the Constitution doesn't mean that it's not there. It does say in the 10th Amendment that the power is not delegated to the United States, so the federal government, by the Constitution. So the things that the Constitution says the federal government are responsible for, other than those things, those other parts go back to the state. Other than the things that were specifically delegated to the federal government, anything that was not specifically delegated to the federal government, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is retained by the states or the people. And so when you think about it, especially with our federal government today, man, they do a lot of stuff that the Constitution didn't tell them they need to do. And they get involved in a lot of things that the Constitution didn't tell them they need to be involved in. And they take away a lot of rights from the people in the state that the Constitution didn't give them. So it's getting pretty close to the time for us to stand up and have that argument, right? To stand up and have that argument. Anyway, that is the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. Now, realize it was presented, I think, with 17 amendments originally. It got dwindled down to 12. Those 12 amendments were sent out to the 13 colony states at this point in time, actually, the 13 states, and they dwindled it down even more to 10. And so that's how we ended up with the 10 amendments for the Bill of Rights. So that's what's going on. That's where we're at. And I'm going to give us a little better picture here. But once again, the Constitution, it is what it is. It is the law of the land. You can't just pick and choose what bits and pieces you want to enforce or believe in and then ignore the rest of it. It's an all or nothing proposition. And if it's a nothing for you, then maybe the United States isn't the place for you. Canada will take you. I'm sure there's some European countries, and I even buy your plane ticket for you one way. Why don't you go spend some time in Afghanistan and see how you like America? So it's important to know it. It's important to read it. It's important to understand it. And it's important to teach your children about the Constitution. All right. Like I said, Facebook isn't letting me post this out there in many places. I'll be able to put it on my own page, and that's about it. So if you can help me out and put it on your pages and your groups, that would be awesome. Click on the like, click on the subscribe. Let me know what you think. And you guys have a great evening. God bless you, and God bless America. Good night.